I had just closed a $30 million deal. I felt like the most powerful woman in the world. I felt unstoppable. But in less than 2 hours, my entire world collapsed. I had felt like Wonder Woman, and suddenly, I was nothing more than disposable trash. My name is Barbara Gaddis. And this is the story of how I was betrayed, brought down, and how I came back to set everything right. I'll never forget that day. It was a calm morning in Madisonville, Kentucky. The kind of morning that deceives you. A clear sky, blue as porcelain, no sign of an incoming storm. Sunlight streamed through the window of my office, drawing golden lines across the glass desk where the freshly signed contracts lay. $30 million. $30 million. I whispered the number to myself, savoring every syllable like grains of sugar. A historic milestone for the company, a contract that launched us to a whole new level in the market. And it was me. I did that. 9 years of unwavering dedication, starting as an intern at 18, climbing through analyst, coordinator, manager, and now, team leader. I felt on top of the world. My heart was racing, but not from anxiety. It was a jolt of pride. I remembered the sleepless nights, the tough meetings, the insane deadlines I managed to meet with my team. I trained them, shaped them, taught many how to survive in this draining corporate world. And now I was finally about to receive the recognition I had earned. In the boardroom, the air felt different. It smelled of fresh coffee and something I couldn't place. Tension, maybe. The dark oak table reflected the ceiling lights, and every chair was occupied. Directors, managers, coordinators, all present, all watching. I took my usual seat, third chair from the head of the table, and kept a subtle smile on my lips. The kind of smile from someone who knows they just made history that morning. At the head of the table was her, Isabella Chason, the new CEO of the company, a name that still sounded unfamiliar to everyone. She came from a large multinational, full of revolutionary methods, disruptive lingo, and a coldness that froze the air whenever she entered a room. Since her arrival, her presence brought more discomfort than inspiration. Her gaze was always clinical, calculated. She didn't speak much, but when she did, every word sounded rehearsed. Isabella stood up with elegance. She wore a spotless white blazer, not a crease out of place, and shoes that clicked rhythmically on the wooden floor. Her eyes scanned everyone at the table and, for a brief second, met mine. And in that instant, something changed. "I have something important to announce," she said, in a flat, almost robotic voice, cold as wet glass. There was no tone of excitement or celebration. It felt like she was reading minutes from a meeting. My fingers clenched involuntarily under the table. I tried to hide it. It was nothing, I thought. Maybe she was about to officially announce the contract. Maybe call me forward, say my name, thank me for my work. But then she went on. "First, I'd like to congratulate the entire team for today's achievement. A historic contract. The results have exceeded expectations, and this is the result of the work of many here." Many, I thought, but I was trained not to interrupt. So I smiled lightly, waiting. However, she paused, and the silence that followed was more brutal than any shout. "We are entering a moment of strategic realignment. The board has decided to restructure the leadership of several key departments." My chest tightened. A shadow crept down my spine. This means some changes will be made. Among them is the replacement of the corporate development leadership. Isabella took a deep breath. "Barbara Gaddis, we are deeply grateful for your years of dedication, but your cycle with us comes to an end as of today." Silence. A hole opened under my feet. The rustle of papers, creaking chairs, everything stopped, as if the world froze. For a second, I thought I was dreaming. Or misheard. "Whoa, what?" someone whispered at the far end of the table. I sat there, frozen, my brain spinning, trying to piece it together. I had just closed a $30 million deal less than 2 hours ago. The company was barely able to breathe from so much celebration. And I was being fired? My stomach twisted. A flush of heat rose from my neck to my face. My eyes threatened to well up, but I took a deep breath. No, I wouldn't cry. Not in front of them. I understand, I finally said, my voice almost as cold as hers. I forced a smile, even as it felt like a blade had slashed my throat. It's been a pleasure dedicating the last 9 years of my life to this company. I wish you all success. I stood, slowly, picked up my folder, my phone, the leather notebook with notes I would never leave behind. The room remained silent. Some looked at me with pity, others with shock. A few had teary eyes, like Daniel, my right hand on the team. He wanted to get up, but I motioned for him to stay. That kind of scene wasn't necessary. Isabella said nothing more, just watched. Her face was a perfect mask of neutrality, but I swear, I saw something glimmer in her eyes. Satisfaction? Maybe. Or relief. The kind only someone who thinks they've won can feel. I walked back to my office, my steps echoing through the halls. With every glance I met, I tasted the bitter sting of humiliation. 9 years, and not a single proper explanation. No ceremony, no dignity. I packed everything into a single cardboard box. Photos with colleagues, certificates, a mug that read "Boss Lady," a gift from the team last Christmas. Bitter touches of irony. But what no one knew was that I had seen it coming. This firing wasn't a surprise, only premature. Months earlier, I'd started noticing odd movements, off-the-record contracts, closed-door meetings with external executives, decisions being made without me, and I understood. Isabella was pushing me out, and not for incompetence because my numbers were the best in the company. It was personal. Maybe my history, my influence, my natural leadership, all of it unsettled her. So I prepared. In silence. And in that moment, with a cardboard box in my arms and my heart burning, my mind was as clear as that morning sky. I wasn't going down alone. And that's when my plan started to take shape. Distrust began like a light breeze, imperceptible. A detail here, another there. Little things that would go unnoticed by most, but not by me. I've never been the type to ignore instinct, and mine was screaming. Isabella Chasson wasn't just ambitious, she was meticulous. The kind of person who made a point of looking you in the eye with a polite smile while slowly sawing off the legs of your chair. Everything about her felt calculated, overly rehearsed. When she joined the company almost a year ago, she caused a stir with her promises of innovation, accelerated growth, process oxygenation. Many applauded. I observed. At first, I thought it was just the shine of new leadership. CEOs come and go, and with them always come trendy speeches. But then the subtle changes began, and the voids. Meetings that used to require my presence started happening without my name on the list. Attacks disguised as reorganization, files updated without clear traces of edits, new reports with altered metrics, favoring results she herself announced in internal memos as operational victories. Nothing was accidental. What unsettled me the most were the so-called external consultants, people no one knew, who passed through reception with temporary badges and vanished into private rooms with Isabella for hours. I tried to get some answers from HR. "Oh, they're just punctual evaluations of performance and compliance," said Denise, visibly uncomfortable. "Performance of whom?" I asked. She looked away, pretended to answer an imaginary call, and walked off. That was enough. I knew something was being orchestrated. I started arriving earlier and staying later. I discreetly monitored executive floor access, read internal logs, compared document versions saved on the servers. There was a pattern, a script unfolding, and I wasn't the protagonist. I was the obstacle. I couldn't trust anyone, not even Daniel, my oldest friend in the IT department, with whom I shared coffee and confidences. He was too honest to lie, but too naive to hide things from Isabella. She was charming, strategic, and knew how to surround people with promises. The kind who turns allies into spies without them even realizing. So I decided to move in silence, not out of fear, but strategy. I knew that if Isabella's plan was to undermine my position, I'd need to dig deeper ground, a space she could never reach. That's when I thought of our largest industrial supply partner, Alcor Solutions. No one understood that contract like I did. For years, I was the bridge between them and our company. I was the one who saved them during the 2019 crisis, and they knew it. I requested a meeting with Enrique Lopes, CEO of Alcor, but not at the office. I chose a neutral location, a quiet, out-of-the-way restaurant on the road between Madisonville and Hanson. A dinner in the dark, no corporate logos, no formal wear. "It's been a while since you asked for an off-the-record chat, Barbara," Enrique said, arms crossed after the second sip of wine. "Everything okay?" "It's about not to be." "That's why I'm here," I replied. "I have a proposal and a protection." He raised an eyebrow. "Protection from what?" "From my own company." I explained everything, carefully, without sounding resentful or paranoid. I described the recent changes, the trap tightening around me. I told him I couldn't prove anything yet, but it was only a matter of time before they tried to take me out. "And what do you want from me?" he asked, leaning back in his chair, now attentive. "A new supply contract, one with an exclusivity clause. Any and all renegotiation can only happen with my personal signature. If my name isn't on the document, the contract stays unchanged." Enrique looked at me silently for a while. The waiter came by offering dessert. We declined. "That would give you a lot of power," he finally said. "I don't want power. I want an anchor. If they try to take me down, I want them to find out they can't do anything without me. Simple as that." He chuckled, a short sound, almost impressed. "That's brilliant. Almost Machiavellian. I like it." "And you get guaranteed supply expansion in a market that's about to become unstable," I countered. "It's not just protection for me, it's guaranteed profit for you." We made the deal right then. Enrique said his legal team could draft something simple and direct. No vague clauses, nothing that could be easily overturned. And that, if necessary, he would personally testify that the clause was a mutual requirement. Back at the company, I submitted the signed contract to our legal department with an irrefutable technical justification. Supply chain shielding in a scenario of potential economic volatility. Jargon that sounds impressive in meetings and makes any manager nod along without fully understanding what was said. Isabella didn't even notice. She was too busy with her special reports and restructuring plans. She spent more time outside headquarters than inside, and when she did show up, it was only to deliver cold announcements, always smiling, as if nothing was wrong. But I knew. And every night when I got home, I looked at the mirror in my hallway. That old mirror inherited from my grandmother, with the dark wood frame and tiny cracks in the corner. And I told myself, in an almost ritualistic tone, "You're way too calm, Barbara." And then I smiled, because it was true. There was no more fear, no more uncertainty. I had something she would never see coming. Not just a trump card, a legally irrefutable trap. It was no longer a matter of if, but when. The board was set. And I was the only one who could see the whole game. And the turning point came sooner than I expected. Arrogance has a sound. It's subtle. It doesn't come through shouting or commands. It hides behind controlled laughter and eyes that believe they've already won the game. Isabella Chasen was the living embodiment of that sound. Since the day I left, she no longer bothered to hide her inflated ego. On the company's internal networks, she was full of praise for herself. New management model, a new era of efficiency, unprecedented modernization. The emails she signed were accompanied by inspirational quotes, as if she were some kind of corporate guru. But I knew that facade well. What she didn't know, and maybe never imagined, was that her reign would be short. Very short. A month after my departure, rumors began to circulate that a new contract with Alcor Solutions was about to be announced. Isabella wanted to turn it into a prestige event, something worthy of business headlines. The idea was simple. Gather the top investors and strategic partners in the main conference room to announce a new cycle of innovation with guaranteed full supply of strategic inputs. She thought it would be her moment of triumph. The room was prepared with pomp. LED screen, refined cocktails, simultaneous translation for international guests. Even a corporate video was rushed into production. Typical of someone who values image over substance. I heard about the event from Henrique himself, Alcor's CEO, who called me days before. Are you sure you don't want to be there, Barbara? It's going to be quite a show. I don't need to be there, Enrique. The clause is already signed. She won't get anything without me. I want to see her face when she realizes it. In real time. It's going to be a meltdown. You're cruel sometimes, he laughed. No, just strategic. The big day arrived. At 10 in the morning, the conference room was packed. Major shareholders in the front rows, business journalists along the sides, and international supply chain partners sitting with curious expressions. Isabella entered like a star. She wore a dark blue pantsuit, her hair in a flawless bun, and a confident smile that almost masked the nervousness in her trembling hands. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, standing in the center of the room with the microphone in hand. Today we take a bold and necessary step toward the future. A strategic contract with Alcor Solutions will guarantee not only stability, but exclusivity in the supply of our inputs for the next 5 years. Henrique remained seated at the table, observing. He had made it clear he would attend the meeting, but wouldn't sign anything without me present. She paused dramatically, as if about to seal the greatest move of her career. She picked up the folder with the documents, opened it with a solemn gesture, and gently slid it toward him. Everything's ready. Just need your signature, Henrique, she said with a victorious smile. Henrique looked her in the eyes with an expression that blended compassion and sarcasm. Then he calmly flipped through the contract until he reached Clause 12B. He closed the folder with a sharp snap and spoke, his voice deep and steady. I'm sorry, Ms. Chasen, but without Ms. Gaddis's signature, this contract is invalid. The silence that followed was cutting. Eyes turned to her like invisible blades. Investors' faces twisted with confusion, anger, and humiliation. A murmur began to rise. Whispers slithered across the room like snakes. A journalist looked up from his laptop, eyebrows raised. Isabella stood still. For a moment, it looked as if the floor had vanished beneath her feet. There must be some mistake, she whispered. Ms. Gaddis no longer works here. Even so, her signature is still required for any contractual changes with Alcor, Henrique replied, unfazed. She blinked, confused. Searched for support with her eyes, but found none. She was alone, exposed, in front of everyone. And just like that, in a matter of minutes, the entire carefully staged performance collapsed. No applause, no victory, just an empty stage and a disoriented CEO. Hours later, I was home, sitting on my couch, a glass of wine in hand, when the phone rang. Unknown number. I answered with a faint smile, already knowing what was coming. Hello? Barbara, said the voice on the other end, low, tense, almost a whisper. This is Isabella. I feigned surprise, though I'd been expecting it. What a surprise, I said, with a poisonous sweetness in my voice. I was almost forgetting you existed. There was a brief silence, as if she were trying to find a dignified way to continue the conversation. But there was no dignity left for her at that point. We need to talk about your return. I let out a short, disbelieving laugh. Oh, Isabella. I'm doing just fine now. Honestly, I don't need that position back. But I appreciate your concern. She swallowed hard. I could almost hear the bitter taste of pride being choked down. This isn't about want. It's a necessity. You know that. Is that so? I tilted my head, staring at the wall in front of me. Funny. It didn't seem necessary when I was dismissed without even a decent thank you. I made a mistake, and I'm willing to reconsider. The word reconsider made me laugh aloud this time. Reconsider? What an elegant term. I bet that would sound great in a press release. CEO reconsiders public humiliation and tries to rehire the one who saved the company from disguised bankruptcy. She went silent. She knew I was in control now. And what's more cruel to someone like Isabella than losing control? Think carefully, Barbara, she finally said. This company could still be yours. Isabella, I whispered, my voice firmer than ever. This company already is mine. You just haven't realized it yet. She hung up. There were no goodbyes, but that was far from the end, because I still had one card left to play. A move that would change everything. Isabella tried to resist at first, of course. Her pride still fought to stand tall amidst the rubble of her own incompetence. But it only took 2 days. 2 long days of desperate phone calls, pressure from investors, and whispers on business news portals for her to seek me out again. This time, not with the cold and calculated voice from before, but with a tone full of desperation. "Barbara," her voice came hesitantly through the phone, almost a choked whisper. "We need to talk. Seriously now." I was sitting at my kitchen table, watching the steam rise from my coffee cup, as if it were drawing the pieces of my chessboard in the air. I took a deep breath and smiled before responding. "What part of no didn't you understand last time?" I asked, slowly, without hiding the sarcasm. "I understood everything. That's why I'm calling. I need you. The company needs you." She would never say, "I was wrong." She would never say, "I'm sorry." But that, the simple, "I need you," was enough to prove she was defeated. "Do you really?" I let the silence fill the call before continuing. "Then listen carefully. I won't come back through the back door. I won't come back in secret. I'll only agree to negotiate under one condition." "What?" Her voice wavered, vulnerable. "I want a meeting with everyone. Shareholders, investors, directors. I want every face that doubted me to be present in that room. We'll negotiate publicly. No theater. No behind the scenes. We'll show them who really moves this company." On the other end of the line, silence. Long, cutting. "Fine," she said finally with a choked voice. "It will be as you wish." The meeting was scheduled for a Thursday morning in the executive hall of the headquarters. The ceiling lights filtered a cold, sharp light over the long, dark wood table. Every seat was taken. They were the familiar faces that had once looked at me with admiration, and then turned in silence on the day of my downfall. I stared at them one by one. Some looked away. Others kept a serious expression. None dared to smile. Isabella was there, of course, sitting at the head of the table. Her makeup barely hid the dark circles under her eyes. Her hands gripped the arms of the chair as if they were shields. When I stood up to speak, the room seemed to hold its breath. "Thank you for being here," I began, keeping my voice firm and controlled. "I imagine you're expecting a simple answer. Yes, I'm back. But it won't be like that." The silence was absolute. I walked to the center of the room, staring into the eyes of each one of them. When I was dismissed, even after closing the largest contract in the company's history, none of you questioned the decision. No one asked why. No one called me for a conversation. And now, when everything is about to fall apart, you look to me again. This is a cry for help, not a job offer. Isabella cleared her throat, trying to regain control. "Barbara, we're willing to correct the mistake. You can resume your position as head of the department, with the same conditions, same salary, same team." My gaze landed on her like a blade. "That," I said in a low, cutting voice, "is an insult. And not to me. To you." She pressed her lips together, already visibly irritated. "What do you want, then?" I took a deep breath, as if savoring each word that would come next. "I want double my previous salary, full autonomy over my team, the freedom to hire and fire without going through anyone. And one more thing." Heads began to turn to one another. Murmurs spread like waves. "I want a seat on the board." The impact was immediate. One of the shareholders, old Kessler, cleared his throat loudly. Another shook his head in denial. One of the investors looked directly at Isabella, demanding a reaction. "That's unacceptable," Isabella said, her voice now louder, filled with forced indignation. "A seat on the board isn't just any position, Barbara. You're asking for absolute power." "I'm not asking, I'm offering." I crossed my arms. The contract with Alcor is still pending. Without it, next semester's goals are unattainable. The stock will drop. The market will react. And you know this. You need me more than I need you. She stared at me, her eyes burning, trying to resist. But reality was cruel. There was no graceful exit. Every second of silence in that room was another nail in the coffin of her authority. Finally, with her teeth clenched, she said, "It's done." An invisible signature was sealed in that moment, not on paper but in the air of the room. I was no longer just an employee. I was a pillar. The kind of person who can't be ignored without consequences. I nodded slowly, as if accepting an offer below my worth purely for strategy. Because deep down, everyone knew I had won. But it wasn't the end yet. I had what I wanted: power, recognition, space. But something inside me was still boiling, a sense of justice, perhaps. Or revenge. There was still one final piece on my chessboard, kept for the right moment. Several weeks had passed since my triumphant return. The change was palpable. The same hallways that once fell silent when I passed, now filled with greetings, respectful looks, even reverence disguised in smiles and coffees, on the house. The newcomers looked at me as though seeing a corporate myth in the flesh. The veterans, with the discomfort of those who realized too late who had always held up the pillars of the company. But still, something was eating at me from the inside. Respect was good, power, even better. But justice, that had not yet been served. I had not forgotten. I hadn't forgotten the way I was dismissed, nor the surgically cruel tone with which Isabella delivered my firing, nor the lowered gazes of those who knew it was wrong, but chose silence. And most of all, I hadn't forgotten the traces she left in her rush to turn the company into her playground of power and influence. It was on a Tuesday afternoon, with the sky overcast and the atmosphere heavy, that I took the first step. I requested an extraordinary meeting with the board of directors and key investors. No detailed agenda, just an urgent and confidential matter. The mere call set off a discomfort that spread backstage like smoke before a fire. On the scheduled morning, I entered the room with firm steps. I wore a dark, impeccable blazer, which contrasted with the red folder I carried in my hands. I didn't choose that color by accident. Red to signal danger, to remind of blood, to announce war. The silence was absolute. Isabella was already there. Upright posture, a fake smile, but the eyes wavered. I placed the folder on the table with a slight snap. I opened it slowly. The sound of the zipper cutting through the silence was like the start of a concert. "Gentlemen," I began, looking directly at the chairman of the board, then to the faces around me. "In the last few weeks, I have gained access to internal documents revealing troubling information." I pulled out the first file. A compilation of emails exchanged by Isabella with one of the external consultants, hired unofficially. Then reports from meetings not recorded in minutes. And finally, the main course. Accounting discrepancies masked in internal transfers between departments, all signed by her. These records show the irregular movement of funds, manipulation of financial data, and omission of strategic meetings, all done without the board's knowledge. I turned to Isabella. And all while she was preparing a restructuring that aimed above all to eliminate anyone who could contest her, including me. She shifted uncomfortably in her chair. She tried to maintain her composure. "This is a farce," she retorted, trying to control her tone. "These data were collected without authorization, and—" "Oh, but they were," I interrupted. "With authorization, from internal audit. Who, by the way, is here today as an observer." I pointed to the woman sitting discreetly at the back of the room, who confirmed with a firm nod. "And legality has been verified. Everything is in order." The gazes shifted. One by one, the board members went from skepticism to unease. Murmurs spread. The chairman cleared his throat, trying to regain control. "Silence, please." He adjusted his glasses and looked down at the documents. "The accusations are too serious to ignore. I propose an immediate vote on the continuation of the current CEO, Isabella Chason, in the position." "This is a circus," she said, louder now, already visibly shaken. "You set this up from the beginning, didn't you? It was all a trap." "A trap?" I smiled, not hiding it. It was a precaution. Something anyone would do if they'd gone through what I went through. One by one, the board members raised their hands. Some with hesitation, others firmly. The count was made in silence, like a whispered requiem. 7 votes in favor of removal, 2 against, and 1 abstention. The chairman stood up. Isabella Chasson is officially removed from her position as CEO of the company. The decision is effective immediately. The room remained silent. Not a usual silence, but the kind that precedes the end of an era. Isabella didn't say a single word. She slowly stood up, her face pale, her eyes lost at an invisible point ahead. She grabbed her folder, her heels clicking on the floor like funeral bells, and she left, without looking back, without farewells, without glory. She who had entered as the woman of steel left as a broken shadow. The room remained silent for long seconds after her departure. And then, gazes turned to me, some with respect, others with fear. Perhaps both. But I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I simply closed the red folder and stood up. "Thank you for your attention," I said, and left the room as I entered. Firm, unstoppable. In the hallway, my assistant was waiting for me. "Did it work?" she whispered, her eyes wide. "It wasn't just justice," I replied, adjusting the watch on my wrist. "It was necessary." And it was there that I realized that my story was not just about revenge. It was about worth, about knowing exactly what one loses when they underestimate a woman who built everything with her own hands. Today, as I walk through the halls of that same company where I started as an intern at 18, the feeling is surreal. The carpets feel softer, the walls quieter, as if the building itself is breathing a sigh of relief, free from a shadow that had loomed for far too long. The scent of coffee from the reception, the one that accompanied me many times through long nights of hard work, now tastes like victory. I open the door to the meeting room. I don't need to knock anymore. It's mine now. Every chair, every screen, every beam of light cast on the glass table carries the mark of everything I've faced to be here. And there isn't a single corner that doesn't hold a memory. Long nights analyzing data, tears swallowed in silence after almost unattainable goals, the metallic taste of humiliation, and then the sweet taste of the comeback. Today, this room is not just the center of decisions, it is the altar where I rebuilt my dignity. Early in the morning, the team gathered for yet another quarterly presentation. Graphs rising, contracts closed, revenues at historic highs. More than numbers, they were marks of a new era, an era where people knew who they were fighting for. The new CFO, Alan Torres, a meticulous and methodical man, and I must admit, initially skeptical about my return, gave me a curious look at the end of the presentation. He approached as the others began to leave. "Barbara," he said with a report folder under his arm, "how did you manage to predict all of this? I mean, even the most hidden risks were neutralized in advance. How?" The question hung in the air like a leaf falling slowly. I looked at him and let the silence speak for a second. Then I smiled. That calm smile I've learned to master, the one that deceives, but also comforts. Because I learned the hard way that too much loyalty is sometimes just a trap in disguise. But strategic vision? That never fails, Alan. He nodded seriously and left with a gleam in his eyes that hadn't been there before. It was respect. Not from fear, but from admiration. The kind that isn't imposed. It's earned. I returned to my chair and looked out the window. The sun bathed Madisonville as it had that day I was fired, and the clear sky was the same. But now, everything was different. I was different. The phone rang. I answered. "Executive office, good morning." "Ms. Gaddis?" said the voice of the manager from the Chicago branch. "The investor from the Asian group confirmed the meeting for Friday. He made a point of saying he'll only come if he's talking directly to you." I smiled. Another chapter. "Set it up. I'll be there." I hung up and stood up. I walked to the wall next to the door. There, on a polished metal plaque, engraved in solid letters, was my name. Barbara Gaddis, Chief Executive Officer. How many times had I walked through that same hallway, looking at the names of others there? How many times had I wondered if my name would ever be on one of those plaques? Now it was. Not by favors, not by luck, but because I earned it. Because I fought for it. Because I survived a system that loves to swallow strong women and spit back their submissive versions. And I didn't give in. I could say my story ends here, with a woman at the top, admired, rewarded. But that would be simplistic. Because this story was never about titles or doubled salaries. It was about voice, about not letting the pain be greater than the truth. It was about sitting back at the table and flipping the board. Recently, at a women's leadership conference, a young woman approached me. She was trembling as she spoke. "Ms. Gaddis, can I ask you something?" she said, her eyes shining. "Of course," I replied, offering a warm smile. "How did you keep going after being fired? How did you endure all of that?" I took a deep breath. I remembered the weight of that morning, the cutting words, the emptiness as I emptied my desk. Because I knew who I was, and I knew they didn't. She smiled, moved. And I understood then that the legacy I leave is not just in the clauses I created, the reports I approved, or the meetings I conduct. It's in the courage to not accept the place they gave me. It's in every woman who, by listening to me, understands that being underestimated is just the first act. The second, we write it with blood, sweat, and strategy. Now, as I walk through the glass doors at the end of the day, I see employees lift their eyes from their monitors to greet me. There's no more pity, no more fear. There's trust. And that's worth more than any figure. The sky over Madisonville begins to take on golden hues. The same sky that witnessed my fall now shines over my rise. And as I walk out of the company, I hear someone whisper to a colleague, "She's the reason we're where we are." But I don't turn around. I don't need to. Because I know. Everything is exactly where it should be. What did you think of today's revenge story? Would you have acted the same way if it were you? Comment below. What's your name? How old are you? And where are you following this story from? Give a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell, because there's still a lot more stories like this coming.